Hi, Ivan, and thanks for your continuing ventures with Circle of Hands. This reflection on your reflection is fraught with danger. The first concern is general in that you guys are playing a role-playing game, which you have indeed purchased and are playing in good faith and enjoying. And then here comes the person who authored the game, kind of swooping down on big wings, judging you. And that is almost unavoidable in terms of internet interactions. So just, I'm aware of it and I'm trying not to do it. That said, let's see what happens if I say anything. So the first reflection concerns your general points about helplessness. And let's put aside the time constraints that you were under for that session. Let's just divorce that from my thoughts. Let's also divorce this from talk of should have done and could have done. Although that's going to be a little tricky because I want to talk about the system as it relates to the fiction, which is a little bit about what you could have done. So let's just pretend I'm not talking about you and this session, and a little bit more about the game and the capabilities of the system itself. Specifically, how it interacts with setting. The class conflict you guys faced was beautifully done, seeing it only through the eyes of your characters, both as Anthony presented and as you both reacted. And I want to focus on the late stage situation where your character is facing the members of the gentry who are clearly completely blind to the class conflict, concerns that they are leading everybody in the community into complete disaster this way. And the situation in which you found yourself, which is as and sing a solo entry into this hall. And here's where I wanted to kind of focus on the feeling of helplessness, bearing in mind that a great deal of that feeling of helplessness as relates to the setting at large, that you guys live in a harsh land, in a harsh time, in a harsh way, and you are only one person, particularly in this situation, up against the seasons, as well as a community, all of which I think was very powerful, very well presented, very well received, very high content, both in the fiction and as heartfelt by the people playing. So let's take a look at your character, who is a Circle Knight, has been at least provisionally spoken to decently eventually. They're co-opting you, of course. I mean, offering you food, extremely dubious food, and you're well aware of what it is. And yet, what is it that in setting terms, in fiction terms, a player, a character, again, divorcing it from you specifically and your time constraints and everything, what does the system offer? What do the mechanics offer? What does the setting offer? The way that they integrate. And something that comes to mind is that certain policy concerns in the Circle Lands are settled quite clearly. They are settled with brawn and iron. And should you have, there I go again, a character in your character's situation had the option to try to settle it that way, even using their values against them, saying single combat is the way to go here. Give me a hauberk. Here's my sword. You believe in your nobility, you believe in your gentry status, you believe in all this stuff. You didn't fight, your fathers fought. Do you have it? You got it? You want to claim this by force of arms? You see, it's not really the sort of post-12th century, post-Crusades, Frankish really ensconced gentry and nobility that we think of as Middle Ages, we're still talking about people who are, despite these class divisions in their minds, are economically really not very far apart and tightly integrated in terms of effort and generations. And the notion, that no, you weren't born to this, you hold this, hold it now, is part of the setting and understood by the members of the culture. So the notion that you were, alone in a hostile realm of power in which your character holds no power. Well, power is who has it in the Crescent Lands, and, your sword is as good as theirs. Well, interesting thought. There was a true anger I felt in your player voice, and I was kind of looking at the system and saying, well, what does the system have for this anger to function? It's a thought. There are oaths, there are spells. Spells against unnamed characters are quite powerful. I don't recall what spells your character was carrying, but I was looking at some 1-point black spells that, drop unnamed characters in their tracks permanently in some cases, and wondering, when you were dealing with this snotty guardsman, if one of them could easily have been instantly slain by an envenom spell, which would pretty much guarantee you walking directly in there with the forces of Urbaja, hovering in the air, might have certainly got the attention in a very different fashion. So that's sort of my thinking, was remembering that even though, yes, all of the helplessness that your character felt in the face of the elements, the face of class conflict, the face of being alone in a very small circle, as you've pointed out, and in a momentarily isolated situation from your only companion, you were still, or a character in that situation is still not entirely without social and mechanical force. This ties to a really interesting point that you raised in the last video and really brought forward in this one, concerning your sense of the validity of the character's social position. The word I'll use is activism. You might remember it from my comment in the video. In many ways, the Circle Knights are not activists in the modern sense at all, but they are activists in a slightly older sense, militancy, and a sense of, no, the old way this is not about reform. This is about renewal and rebirth, if anything. We're going to have to go all the way with this. The characters may not even realize this intellectually. In fact, they almost certainly don't. That they have already had the revolution, and that it is, in many ways, they're ahead of their own curve, and are stunned, perhaps, at the nakedness of what they see that the people around them do not. This is where that business about the eventual outcome, the post-venture outcome, becomes so important, and I think really, really interesting. I have, in this game, granted you, the player, via the experiences of your character, the faith of the militant activist, that the old ways, the old structure, did not hold. It's not that it might not hold, it didn't. And furthermore, that what you do here will probably turn out okay. Your efforts here, your being here, your making the effort at all, will turn out okay. Most of the time. Bad luck can happen. But when you try. It matters. And that's faith in the real world, sometimes extremely misguided faith. In this game, it's not. In this game, you, the player, know it. The implications for that, for going for broke, even if your characters die, you become wraiths and can still struggle in this venture, for example, gives you license for moral action that isn't tied to the immediate direct success of the venture in the ordinary sense of a role-playing situation where your skill rolls tell the tale of whether you will be successful in the long run. That sort of atomic causality has been relaxed. Furthermore, survival. I've got to keep my character alive to get XYZ done. That's a constant hovering constraint on play isn't really operative here either. You can die for the circle, and it can, either through your actions as a wraith, with further activity, or just because you didn't hit one of the tripwires, turn out okay. The license of moral power in this situation regarding a single action in this one moment of play at any moment is, I think, almost a gulf, almost a yawning portal to discover in play. It's so different, if I do say so myself, from most solve the problem kind of role-playing scenarios that it even if you see it intellectually, to experience it, to touch it, and then recoil from it perhaps before you actually manage to go through it. I've seen it before in Circle of Hands. People first seeing that this is there, second kind of touching it and going, ooh, and then experience it often the hard way by having a character killed and becoming a wraith, for example, or having everything go south in the most kind of depressing, oh god, we screwed this up entirely, oh man, oh wait, really? Those kinds of experiences are gradual, I have found, for this game, and I think I sort of see you going through it. So that's just my reflection on your reflection. I've attempted to keep that sort of third-party, authoritative, judgmental content out. So I hope I succeeded with that. Take care, and thank you again.